When I was 32 years old, I was making $2 million a year on Wall Street, but then I blew it all up. It was partially a midlife crisis, but partially the belief that I could make more than that online. 10 years later, the verdict is in. Yes, there are huge benefits of having an online business. I can surf every day. I haven't set an alarm in 10 years. And yes, at 45 years old, I still have my six pack. But I've only made a tiny percentage of what I made on Wall Street as an internet creator. In this video, I'll break down the real truth about making money online after having a successful corporate career. I'll discuss the myth of owning your audience, why you have to specialize, how catering to algorithms is worse than being a junior investment banker, what I would do if I was starting over again, and why $250,000 is the magic number. Let me first start off with the history of my online business, RadReads. As you know, I spent 14 years working on Wall Street. I was mostly at BlackRock doing hedge fund of funds, and at 31 years old, I was one of the youngest managing directors at BlackRock, a title that's usually reserved for folks in their late 30s, early 40s. I had made multiple years of seven-figure income, but there was that pebble in my shoe, that thing that's just low-grade anxiety, where I said to myself, this is not going to be the rest of my life. I don't want to be comfortably numb going through the motions of life. I had just had our first child. We now have two. And I decided at 35 years old to quit without a plan. The year's 2015. And I think it's just important to situate us historically. The iPhone's been out for 8 years, but I always tell people that in 2015, Instagram stories didn't exist, right? So this was still the old days of people taking food pictures and sharing them on Instagram. LinkedIn wasn't really a social network. Twitter was really big. Facebook was really big. YouTube was still a niche thing, right? And so when I left Wall Street, I actually did not set out to become an internet entrepreneur. What I had originally done was I had earmarked about 18 months of living expenses, a couple $100,000. My wife and I were cool with spending going through that to discover what I was going to do next. I thought I was going to either become a venture capitalist or work at a late stage fintech, financial technology startup, using my finance skills, using my interest in technology to go work in fintech. However, when I left, right before I had left, I had started this tiny email newsletter. It was a BCC sent to 36 people. And all it was is what is now referred to as link blogging, which is, here are 5 articles. Here are my thoughts on the articles. Enjoy. And I even say in that email, there's a PS that says, by the way, I don't know when I'm going to do this again. So I started this newsletter purely, and this is a theme that we're going to come back to, purely because it was a labor of love. I thought it was really cool to read these fun articles about self-improvement, about productivity, about personal finance, about different cultural issues. And I thought it was really fun to share it with my friends, these 36 friends. And right away, people started to reply and said, this is great. This is so awesome. When can I get the next one? I love that article. Is this a business? Some people even said. And so one of the beautiful things about an internet career is that you can share things that you discover on different social media networks, and people will react to it. Now, that does not guarantee a business at all, but it is a really powerful mechanism of exchange. So idea exchange. So that was a starting point of my internet career, this email newsletter that I am working on the 438th issue of it. And we're going to talk about how a lot has changed with regards to email newsletters. But for every single week, for 438 consecutive weeks, I've taken a few breaks, but not any significant ones. I have sent this email newsletter called RadReads. You can sign up, radreads.co/join. Now, the newsletter has always, it had this extremely powerful unintended consequence was Khe stayed top of mind with people. And I say top of mind with a series of ideas that are still near and dear to my heart today, a unique voice, right? It's kind of this rad, kind of chill, but also intellectual perspective on things, and a lot of vulnerability, right? A real authenticity and vulnerability. And here's what happened with that newsletter. As I started to share it, obviously I would inject my opinion, I would inject my life story into it, I would inject my fears, my concerns, my dreams into it. And people started to react and say, wow, this was a compliment that I would get very often in the early days. It's like you're in my head, right? And I was wrestling with a lot of these questions of, did I make the right decision? Why do we work so hard? What's my relationship with money? What kind of father do I want to be? What kind of husband do I want to be? And as I was sharing this through this email newsletter, people were really connecting with it. They were forwarding it to their friends. A few journalists even saw it. And that was a really, it was not part of the plan, but that is something I feel so grateful for, is that for 450 weeks, I've stayed top of mind for folks through this email newsletter. And we'll talk about all the other stuff, while adding value to their lives. So people are excited when I don't send the weekly newsletter. People check in, like, are you okay? I hope you're still doing it, and so on. From that newsletter, a bunch of different money-making opportunities arose. And I would say that there are kind of three chapters. The first chapter was very accidental, and it involved coaching. And so a lot of my writing is about what it means to live and examine life. What is it like to really think through your life assumptions? There's a big element of lifestyle design in there. There's a big element of psychology of money in there, relationships. But that was the theme. And I was a seeker. I am a seeker. And I was using the internet as my means, almost like a notebook for seeking. And so as I was putting these ideas out there, people were starting to have a sense of how I saw the world and how I would think. And I'll never forget, about maybe 8 months after I started the newsletter, I had left Wall Street. I got an email from an ex-peer, not a friend, but someone who I knew from the finance industry, that said, hey, I love your writing. I love what you're thinking about. I love the idea space that you're playing in. Can you come in and give a talk to the partners at my firm about happiness? Right. And so in his mind, what he had seen was Khe is becoming a happiness expert. Right. Again, I didn't see that in myself, but that's what I was pursuing personally. And so he invited me to speak to this partnership group. I think I made $7,500 doing that. And that was the first moment when I said, holy crap. By putting my ideas out there, there's actually a demand for some of the things that I do and things I have to say. From that, the same hedge fund asked me if I would then go and coach the folks at this financial services firm. And so I think the rate I was charging it was $350 an hour. And so it was kind of a benefit that they were offering to their team, a coaching benefit. This is early. This is 2016. And again, there was validation that I was on the right track and that there was money on the other side of what I was doing. In that time period, I also got a bunch of press. And again, I've never had a PR firm, but there was the CNN article, Oprah for Millennials. That was huge. There was a Bloomberg article, which called me the Wall Street guru. And then there was a Barrons article about the man who fled Wall Street. This was all in about a 6-month period. And people who were in media and authors and friends of mine, they said, how did you get these media? These are prime media placements. And again, there was no strategy. A lot of what I was doing was accidental, but I was noticing that as I put myself out there, again, a lot of luck. These opportunities were finding me, right? And that was one of the beautiful things about building this online brand, being an influencer, I hate that word, was that people were finding me, following me, and just new opportunities were showing up. A major opportunity that arose was from my friend Lauren Brown, who sadly has left us due to breast cancer. But Lauren Brown was watching what I was doing, and she worked at a media company called Quartz or QZ.com. And she said, "Hey, why don't you come in and become an entrepreneur in residence?" So again, just this luck was finding me. I got asked to do a TED talk, but I joined this media company and I was unpaid. I was an entrepreneur in residence, but I got an inside look at what a digital media business looked like. And I got to hone my writing skills. I got to work with some amazing editors. Kevin Delaney, the co-founder of Quartz, is still a dear friend of mine. And I joked that it was my 36-year-old internship. And that was when I really, it validated that I was onto something, and B, it put me in an ecosystem of writers and social media folks and editors and just people I'd never interacted with before. And I just kept running with it. Eventually, they gave me a part-time job, and we started a business, a sub-business called Quartz at Work, which was our attempt to compete with Harvard Business Review for millennials. And Quartz at Work is still around to this day. Quartz has been sold a handful of times. But again, what I want to reiterate is like the beauty of these online, of putting yourself online and having this presence, was that luck would find you. These people, again, these amazing, amazing relationships.
Hey, quick time out. If you're watching this video, you're probably someone who thinks deeply and intentionally about your career, about your life, and about your relationships. But sometimes you might find yourself in a place feeling stuck, unmotivated, or just rudderless. If that's you, we have a coaching program for people looking to make a bold pivot and rediscover their aliveness. Just check out radreads.co/coaching. Now back to the video.
The next phase of my internet career involves having built an audience. So this is about 2017 and 2018, so maybe 3-ish years after I had left. At that point, I think I had maybe 25,000 email subscribers. I was growing a bit of an audience on Twitter, and I was just becoming very comfortable being online. I had a podcast for a year, a different podcast called Rad Awakenings. And I was really starting to kind of cut my teeth as a true internet personality, let's say, and starting to get followers. Now, there is a big movement, and I'm a little skeptical of it, but there's a big movement that says if you build an audience, kind of like what I did, you don't have to think about a business. And then once you have a captive audience, then you can start selling things to your audience. And that is definitely what happened to me. When we talk about how I would do things if I started today, I don't fully agree with that statement, or it's a lot more nuanced. But I had built this audience, and that's when we launched online courses. And again, one of my areas of expertise was on productivity. And so we taught this course called Supercharge Your Productivity. Supercharge Your Productivity was a COVID darling. It did extremely well. It was very high leverage. It was just myself and an assistant for a while. And then I built a team around it. That product was accelerated by a very key transformation. If anyone is thinking about an online business, especially a personality-based business, it's the importance of marketing. These are really marketing businesses. So if you think of a product like Masterclass, Steph Curry will teach you how to shoot. Diplo will teach you how to DJ. Coppola will teach you how to edit, how to direct a movie. So they have these courses, but Masterclass is really a marketing machine, right? So yes, they have the courses. That's probably, I don't know, 10, 20% of what they do kind of as a company. The other 80%, this is my unscientific assessment, is marketing. They do search engine marketing. They do tons of Instagram. They're kind of always chasing, like moving around to the different social media networks and new platforms, TikTok and so on. So this is something that I think most people don't realize about these online businesses is they are marketing businesses, right? So they start as these creative projects, but if you really want to make money, they turn into marketing businesses. And very, very, very online marketing is a blood sport. It's a very competitive business. So from that phase, I did the productivity course. I built a team around that. I think that course at its peak, the best cohort we did, I think, did 300,000 in revenue. We did it for 13 cohorts, nearly 3 years, and made about $1.3 million in revenue over that period. Now, the profits were significantly lower, and I'll talk about my profitability as an online entrepreneur, but the profits were much lower because I hired a lot of people to support that growth. The first couple iterations of it were extremely high margin, but then we got into marketing land. It became way more competitive. And so I had to hire more to basically my margins got eaten up. I left that business collapsed when people went back to work and the kind of COVID go-go days ended for online business. If you look at Peloton's stock chart or Slack's Zoom's stock chart, you just see this giant spike around 2021, 22, and then it just comes cratering back down to earth. That was exactly what happened to our business. I ended up laying off everyone except for one person. And now we've actually gotten back to our roots with our one-on-one coaching program, which is kind of a high-end coaching program for post-financial folks. So people who can take multiple years off where money is they don't need to work. And then we have our group coaching program for people who, like me, who are, in their mid 30s that are looking to make pivots, much smaller footprint. And I'll talk about why I don't want to do that level of marketing. Now, if I was starting again, so people see my career track often and they say, hey, I have a successful corporate career. I have the ability to make a change, or sometimes they just want to make more money. What should I do? How should I go about it? So in this 10-year period that I've been doing online business, personality-based business, things have changed a lot in a few ways. One, the primary change is the amount of competition. Like anything, when you enter a market in the early days, there's just not a lot of people doing it. You could have an email newsletter where you just summarize articles. Now there's so many of those, right? I was early in the podcast days. Now there's so many podcasts, so hard to discover. You name it, anywhere you go, there's so much competition. So that's the first thing. There's a ton of competition. The second thing is that there's more social networks, and the social networks have matured, right? So now it used to be, 10 years ago, you could just have an email list and be in one social media network. Now you kind of you need to be in a lot of places. You have to kind of meet people where they are. One example is I write a blog post and not a lot of people read it anymore. But if I chop that blog post up into literally pictures and put them on Instagram, people will read them there. They won't read it online, but they'll read it on a blog. But they'll read it as an Instagram post, right? Meet people where they are. So that's the second change. The third change is the death of the follower. And this is something that is pretty gnarly, and it's a pretty big change. And so if you think about Instagram or Twitter in the old days, you followed someone you liked, your friend, or, Tim Ferriss. And as Tim Ferriss released his ideas through social media, you would see them, right? That is the follower model. That's been blown up. And it's been replaced by what's called FYP, or the For You page. And really what that is that's the algorithmic based feed, right? So you can think of TikTok as pioneering the way here, but almost every social media network is doing this now, is followers don't matter as much, who you follow on TikTok doesn't matter. It's another signal to show you content. You'll see more of the people that you follow. But you go on TikTok and it just shows you random ass shit that it thinks you'll be interested in, right? So I could be following Tim Ferriss, but if Tim Ferriss posts something that the algorithm doesn't think I'll be interested, it's not going to show me. Likewise, Joe Schmo could be making a TikTok about hip hop, Kendrick Lamar versus Drake, and then it will show it to me. Even though I don't follow Joe Schmo, I have no idea who he is. So the death of the follower and the replacement of the algorithm has changed the way that you basically attract new people. It's a different skill. And to be honest, it's one that I'm still processing. In that same vein, it is very hard to think about what video is eating everything, right? Vertical video is eating everything. And even people who say, oh, I love writing, you love to read words, you still like watching videos. Very few people don't want to see videos. So that's kind of changed the nature of the game, right? So if you think about the key skills that you need, right, you need to understand how to play that kind of For You page. Like you need to grab people's attentions through algorithms. You need to be on many different platforms, and you need to be good at video, and you need to be good at what they call hooks, but I would just say is like grabbing people's attention, right? It's a real competition for attention these days. So folks come to me and they say, hey, I want to do what you did. How do I do it? Where do I start? I want to become an online personality. So the first question I ask is, where are you on the continuum of business and creativity, right? And this is where it gets kind of blurry because they are personality driven businesses that map to your level of creativity. So here's an example. Let's say that you identify, this would be the business continuum. You identify a need, and the need is that there are professionals in finance who want to understand AI, right? So that would be an approach where you start with a market opportunity, right? There's professionals in finance who want to learn AI, or maybe there's working moms who want to learn how to cook healthy meals, or dads, 45-year-old men that are learning Brazilian jiu-jitsu for the first time, right? So you kind of find this niche and you see that there's an opportunity there, right? So that would be kind of on the business side. On the other side, there would be kind of the Khe Hy side, which is the things that you're interested in, you talk about them, right? So I'm interested in parenting, I'm interested in philosophy, I'm interested in meditation, I'm interested in surfing, and I'm interested in what leads an exam in life, right? That is very much a smorgasbord of my personal interests versus if Khe, so for example, we could use Khe as an example. What if all Khe did was write content aimed at people who earn over $500,000 that want to change jobs? That's it. That would be, by the way, that's a great business opportunity. And I'm going to tell you why I don't want to actively pursue that. All I would do is just put out that content, right? And I would test it. I would get better at it, and I'd have better examples. I might rename myself like careerpivot.com, right? It's like, oh, Khe's the career pivot guy, right? By the way, that works well with my personal story, so there would be alignment there. But if I started talking about why my principles of fatherhood, the careerpivot.com people would be like, dude, stay in your lane, bro. Like, we're not here for that. We just want to pivot, right? And so there's this inherent tension. There's two inherent tensions. There's an inherent tension about how much of your personality do you want in it? Because, careerpivot.com is just a business. I could go in and start a pest control business with the same philosophy, right? Just write a lot of pest control things, teach myself pest control, hire, a few pest control people. So that is a very kind of, you start with a business model first, and then the personality leans into it. And that's all they talk about. That is the way you make money online. And you can make a lot of money online if you want to do that. The other approach, the Khe Hy approach, is where you're like, these are the things I'm interested. Here you have to attract people with kind of the breadth and, dare I say, magnetism of your personality. That's how you invite people into your orbit. But again, because they're coming in through all these different side doors, it's not always clear that they're going to be a customer. And by the way, you don't know what you're going to sell them, right? So that is a way where you lead with creativity, and then you kind of reverse engineer into a product, right? And a lot of times that product that gets engineered is some kind of coaching, is some kind of selling your time for money, right? That's coaching for a lot of people. That could be different masterminds, that could be communities, but the real product is the personality, right? And so I think the first question that I would ask is, if you are starting, where do you want to be at that spectrum? And I really encourage you to be on one side or the other, because if you're in the middle, you're kind of muddling along and you kind of want to have your cake and you want to eat it. So that would be the first thing. From there, you can then figure out the kind of content that you want to create, the kind of messaging, right? Do you want to do it through podcasting? Do you want to do it through writing? Do you want to do it through YouTube videos, right? Again, I'm suffering as the business person because I am all over the place. People can't define me. I lead with diversity of ideas, and then people don't know, people are not interested in the diverse product offering, right? Which, by the way, is very hard to implement as an individual. So that would be the first thing, is to you find out where you are in the continuum, then you create specific content for that strategy. And then the next thing that you would do is, I would encourage you to really think about what are the platforms that have built-in discovery, right? Because then you're going to want to grow your audience, right? Whether you're doing careerpivots.com or Khe Hy as a surfer dude philosopher, you're going to want to grow your audience. And the way audiences typically grow these days is through these algorithmic feeds, right? So, Khe might make an article about why he likes to surf. YouTube video about why he likes to surf, and YouTube will show it to people who they think like surfing. If those people like surfing, they vibe with Khe, then they'll follow Khe. But here's the challenge there is, like, do they then buy Khe's coaching? That's where it gets a little bit more nebulous. However, if I had a channel and all it was about was career pivots, the website was careerpivot.com. Every single video is like, this is how you career pivot if you're 30. This is how you career pivot if you're 40. This is how you career pivot if you're 25. These are the skills you need to career pivot. This is how much money you need to career pivot, right? You could see that if someone finds that channel and is looking to career pivot, then they're like, oh, I found it, right? This is exactly for me. And so that's where that tension is. Now, that continuum of where you land is really important, because creating content is like being an investment banker. It can be. So you have to feed these algorithms. The more you want to grow your business, the more platforms you have to be on, the more content you have to create. Every social media network has its own vibe, so you have to kind of understand that. So if I was starting again, I would pick one. I mean, if I really had the time, I would pick YouTube, because that has video. It hits on all the levers. It's video. It has the algorithmic discovery, and it has that long form nature. Whereas if it hits, people are really going to relate to you. TikTok would be the miniature version of that. But I've had a few viral TikToks, but those people, they might never follow me again. They might literally just want to see me for that one video that I made. So picking that social media platform. And so For me, what this has led to is a few things. One is it's actually very hard to make money. And this will be my third year. So year 8, 9, and 10, I will have netted before taxes, after all my expenses, about $250,000, which is about 12% of what I made when I worked on Wall Street and when I was 31 years old. So it's a massive, massive pay cut. Personally, I've made a few choices. One is I've landed on that creativity continuum. I cannot specialize in things because that goes against my innate curiosity. And this is something that you really have to consider if you're wanting to pursue this type of track. So that goes against my innate curiosity. I need to be creative. The second is that I've decided is that I don't want to manage people, right? I have one colleague who is a product manager / chief of staff and facilitates everything that we do. But I don't want to have one-on-ones. I don't want to be on Slack all day. I don't want to be in project management software all day. And the reality is, if you don't want to manage people, you're pretty much selling your time for money. And so, of course, you're going to hit a ceiling. And again, I think that ceiling is probably somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000. I feel very lucky that my clients are extremely wealthy, and my coaching practice is a very platinum priced business. But if I was selling, coaching to folks in their mid-20s, it would be a very different game. I'd have to make it up in volume, which would be tricky. So my non-negotiables are: I want to be creative. I don't want to manage a team. And the last one is that I want to do this for decades. It's been a decade. I could see myself doing at least 10 more years, probably 15 more years until I'm 60. And so I cannot get stuck on doing things that I don't enjoy, right? And people, one classic example, I hate LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn's so corny. I think I don't like the style. I don't like the user experience. I don't like the vibe. Those things all matter dearly to me. LinkedIn would be a great place for me to invest a lot of time. I just can't do it. So I'm leaving money on the table by not pursuing LinkedIn. And I'm putting wind at my sails by not doing anything that gives me negative juju, right? That gives me bad vibes, right? And so while I'm willing to take that short-term trade-off, I'm doing it in the belief that if I do the things that excite me, which, by the way, are podcasting, TikTok is actually becoming really exciting. Twitter used to be exciting, not so much anymore. Blogging's not exciting anymore. And so right now I'm TikTok, YouTube, and podcasting. Those are the things that are exciting, and I'm going to lean into those for the next 5-10 years. So at the end of the day, it really becomes like, what do you want out of being an online personality? It's not enough to just become one, right? It's like, what personal goals will that achieve for you? And then can you do it in a way that is aligned with your values, that is aligned with your personality, so that you can play the long game? And if you play the long game, I promise you, if you can stay in any game for a decade, 2 decades, the world is your oyster. Peace.